When the marine biologist was explaining sonar data to young researchers, 75-year-old volunteer Harold was listening quietly. Then he calmly said, "That sound is a Soviet submarine." At that moment, everyone's life changed. Harold Miller's calm statement shocked everyone in the room. Because the young marine biologist had been trying to analyze sound data for 2 hours, and this 75-year-old volunteer had solved it with one sentence. But how did Harold know? He had been volunteering at the Marine Research Station for 30 years, never talking about his past. Until that day came. Harold's 40-year secret was related to a very special, very classified mission. And that day, everyone would understand that this humble man wasn't just a sea lover. Hello, welcome to The Last Stand. Have you or your loved ones served in the military? Share your experiences in the comments. Harold Miller had been volunteering at Monterey Bay Marine Research Station for 30 years. At 75 years old, medium height, white-haired, he was a reliable man who came on the same days every week. He had no formal education in marine biology, but he loved the ocean. Harold's job was simple: organize daily sonar recordings, categorize ocean sounds, and help researchers. But the way he did this work was remarkable. It was as if he recognized every sound. Dr. Amanda Foster, the station's chief marine biologist, had noticed Harold's abilities. Harold can distinguish whale sounds from engine sounds. But he doesn't stop there. He can even tell what type of vessel they're coming from. This ability was unique to Harold. Young researchers looked at him with admiration. Harold's sound analysis ability wasn't limited to whale sounds. He could identify every type of sound in the ocean. Ship engines, submarine propellers, even helicopter sounds coming from a distance. Young researcher Kevin Thompson had asked Harold one day, "How do you do this, Harold? How can you identify sounds so precisely?" Harold's answer was always the same. "You gotta listen to the sea, Kevin. The ocean always tells you something." But Kevin had noticed something else. Harold used some unusual terms: cavitation noise, propeller blade signature, filtering sound interference. These weren't academic terms, they were technical jargon. Dr. Foster had noticed the same thing. Harold's knowledge came from practical experience, not theory. Harold had been working at the station for 30 years, but nobody knew anything about his past. Where he came from, what he used to do, none of it was known. Rebecca Martinez, the station's archive manager, had found Harold's application form one day while going through files. It was very brief and vague. Harold Miller, retired technician, interested in marine research. Retired technician was a very general description. What field had he been a technician in? Where had he worked? These questions remained unanswered. Rebecca had discussed this with other volunteers. Everyone had the same impression of Harold: very knowledgeable, but very secretive. William Bill Davis, retired fisherman and another station volunteer, had said, "Harold knows everything about the ocean, but he has military discipline. Like he's had military training." On the morning of May 15th, Dr. 15th DAG. Foster and her team were doing routine sonar analysis. They were examining recordings from the previous night, but this time there was a different sound. A sound they couldn't identify or categorize. What could this be? Asked young researcher Emily Rodriguez. Dr. Foster had replayed the recordings. Deep, rhythmic, unusual sound. It wasn't whale sounds, it wasn't ship engines either. Maybe a submarine? Suggested Kevin Thompson. But what type of submarine? This sound profile doesn't match any civilian submarine, said Dr. Foster. They had been analyzing for 2 hours but couldn't reach any conclusion. Harold was listening quietly in the corner as always, organizing sonar recordings, categorizing sound files. Dr. Foster started playing the recordings once more. Harold stopped the moment he heard the sound recordings. His hands trembled, his eyes froze. Memories from 40 years ago had suddenly come alive. Dr. Foster continued playing the recording. "This sound is really strange. It doesn't match any database." Harold broke his silence. Calmly, but with a definitive tone, he said, "That sound is a Soviet submarine." Everyone in the room turned to look at Harold. Kevin Thompson's mouth fell open. Emily Rodriguez blinked in amazement. Dr. Foster stopped the recordings. "Harold, are you sure? That's a very specific claim." Harold approached. Yes, I'm sure. That sound is from a Victor-class nuclear submarine's propeller, old Soviet submarine from the 1970s. At that moment, everyone's life changed. Dr. Foster's team couldn't believe Harold. This humble 75-year-old volunteer had identified in one sentence what they couldn't analyze for 2 hours. Harold, said Dr. High Live and Honey. Foster, how do you recognize this sound? Harold hesitated. Memories he hadn't shared with anyone for 40 years were passing before his eyes. I used to work with these kinds of sounds. What do you mean, these kinds of sounds? Asked Kevin. Harold took a deep breath. I served on submarines. Rebecca Martinez asked in amazement. Civilian submarines? Harold shook his head. No, Navy. Harold's Navy statement had a bomb effect in the room. Everyone had gathered around him. Emily Rodriguez asked excitedly, Did you really work on submarines, Harold? Yes, 23 years. Dr. Foster started asking more careful questions. What position did you work in? Sonar operator. Bill Davis approached curiously. Which submarines? Harold hesitated. The answers to these questions might still be sensitive. Various nuclear submarines, in Polaris, Poseidon programs. Kevin Thompson's eyes widened. I know these programs. These were strategic deterrence programs during the Cold War. Harold nodded silently. Dr. Foster couldn't hide her curiosity. So the sound we're listening to right now is really a Soviet submarine? Yes, but it's so old it's probably museum ship status, or sold to another country. After Harold's explanation, there was great excitement at the station. But Harold felt uncomfortable. His past that he had hidden for 40 years had suddenly been revealed. That evening at home, he was thinking about old days. USS Nautilus, USS George Washington, USS Lafayette, years spent on dozens of submarines, from 1962 to 1985. He had lived in the depths of the ocean for 23 years. His mission as a sonar operator was to track Soviet submarines. During the most tense days of the Cold War, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he was part of the silent war that brought the world back from the brink of war every day. But when he retired in 1985, he knew he couldn't share these experiences with anyone. Submarine missions were classified information. He had remained silent for 40 years, until today. The next day, Dr. Foster started researching Harold's former duties. She was gathering information about submarine programs during the Cold War. USS Nautilus was the world's first nuclear submarine. USS George Washington was the first ballistic missile submarine. Those who served on these ships were elite personnel. Kevin Thompson had researched the technical terms Harold mentioned: cavitation noise, propeller blade signature. These were indeed submarine sonar terminology. Rebecca Martinez had reviewed personnel records again. Harold had reference letters, but they were all written in very general terms. These researches were confirming Harold's words. He could have really served in the Navy. Dr. Foster decided to send the sound recording Harold analyzed to Navy experts. If Harold was right, this could be an important detection. Commander Patricia Hayes from the Pentagon responded, "We analyzed it. This is indeed the sound signature of a Victor-class Soviet submarine. Must be a very old recording or a ship sold to another country." When Dr. Foster gave this information to Harold, Harold just nodded. "I knew it." Commander Hayes had asked, "Who made this analysis?" "Must be someone very experienced." Dr. Foster had told Harold's story. Commander Hayes was surprised. "Harold Miller. This name sounds familiar. I'll check old Navy records." 3 days later, Commander Hayes called again. Her voice was excited. "Dr. Foster, Harold Miller really served in the Navy. 1962, 1985, 23 years, sonar specialist. He was involved in highly classified missions." Dr. Foster couldn't hide her amazement. "What missions?" "I can't give details, but very critical missions. He was involved in the most sensitive operations of the Cold War period. He has a perfect service record." Harold's words were completely true. Commander Hayes continued, "I have a message for Harold Miller. If it's appropriate, we'd like to meet with him." Dr. Tense. Foster relayed the message from the Navy to Harold. Harold hesitated at first, then accepted. The following week, special guests came to the station: Commander Hayes and 2 Navy officers. They wanted to have a private meeting with Harold. During the meeting, Harold's real story emerged. "I really served in the Navy for 23 years. As a sonar operator, I was involved in Polaris and Poseidon programs." Commander Hayes added, "Harold Miller was one of the most experienced sonar operators of the Cold War. He was an expert in recognizing Soviet submarine signatures." Harold continued, "I started in 1962, retired in 1985. What I learned during that period, I couldn't share with anyone. It was classified information." "So why are you telling us now?" asked Dr. Foster. "Because it's old information now, and recognizing that Victor-class submarine is only possible with experience." After Harold's real identity was revealed, a great wave of respect began in the Monterey Bay area. The local newspaper wrote the story. "Our 30-year volunteer turns out to be Cold War hero." The Veterans Association offered Harold honorary membership. The VFW Post accepted him with a special ceremony. Most of all, the young researchers at the station were impressed. Kevin Thompson: "Harold, you're a real hero. You protected this country." Harold hadn't expected these reactions. "I just did my job." Other people did the same thing. Emily Rodriguez added, "But you stayed silent for 40 years. That's a great sacrifice." After Harold's story appeared in local news, his son Robert, whom he hadn't spoken to in a long time, called. "Dad, I saw your photo in the newspaper. I never knew you worked in the Navy." Harold's voice was trembling. "I couldn't tell you, Robert. It was classified information. Dad, I'm so sorry for never trying to understand you. You were always quiet, distant. Now I understand why." Robert was crying. "Dad, you're a real hero, and I never knew it." "You didn't do anything wrong, son. I couldn't be a normal father either. My mind was always at sea. Dad, can I come? My son is 15 now. He wants to meet his grandfather." Harold's heart filled with joy. "Of course come, son. I missed you both so much." After Harold's story reached Navy Command, it was decided to organize a special ceremony. A grand honor ceremony was held in Monterey at the Marine Research Station. High-ranking officers from the Navy, local officials, and all of Harold's friends attended. Commander Hayes gave a speech. Harold Miller protected this country's security for 23 years. During the darkest days of the Cold War, he served in the depths of the ocean, and he didn't share this with anyone for 40 years. This is a true example of heroism. Harold was given the Navy Achievement Medal. It was also announced that the Harold Miller Sonar Laboratory would be established at the station. Harold was crying during the speech. After 40 years of silence, he was finally being appreciated. Today, Harold Miller lives a happy life at Monterey Bay Marine Research Station. He's no longer just a volunteer, but an official consultant on sonar analysis. Young researchers call him Captain Harold. Harold's home now displays Navy photographs and medals. His son Robert and grandson David visit regularly. David loves listening to his grandfather's stories. Dr. Foster still marvels at Harold's analyses. Harold recognizes ocean sounds even after 40 years. This isn't just talent, it's lived experience. Because now everyone knows, Harold Miller protected the world's security for 23 years. And he did it without ever bragging. The 40-year silence has ended, and Harold finally received the honor he deserved. If these powerful stories appeal to you too, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We'll continue bringing you more hero stories every day.